Good afternoon, everybody. It's 4:30 and it's time to begin. So I will call the meeting of the 17th meeting of the Planning and Environment Committee to order. It's a virtual meeting, and during the COVID-19 emergency, City Hall is open to the public with reduced capacity and physical distancing requirements. Meetings can also be viewed via live streaming on YouTube and the city website at london.ca. So I will begin by saying that the City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing or advisory committee meetings, and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact pec@london.ca. And now I will look to committee to see if there are disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I will go to the consent items, and we have 6 consent items. I will see if anybody would like to pull any of those items. Okay, not seeing any requests for pull. Bless you, Deputy Mayor. Do I have a motion to move the consent items? Moved by Deputy Mayor Halmer, seconded by Councillor Hopkins. Any comments on those items? Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a quick question regarding 2.2, which is removing a holding provision. This is a development in my ward. I know when this was at planning, we looked at a different site plan here. And my question through you to staff is, I see the car wash is being moved over to the corner, but any concerns with water, or just to any further comments through the site plan process? I know there was a number of questions in the community when this came to us before. So just a quick update through you, Madam Chair.
So I'll go to Mr. Maxula.
Actually, it's Mr. Yeoman, Madam Chair. I'm happy to answer that. So as the council indicated, there have been some minor revisions to the site plan that was brought forward during the rezoning process. The car wash has been adjusted, and a noise study was completed as part of the application as well. The noise study found that any future development to the south of the site may have minor impacts in terms of a noise perspective. So as a result, the development will be installing a noise mitigation fence along the southern boundary of the site. No concerns with water. That's been addressed through the site plan process as well, and there'll be a proper connection on Colonel Talbot.
Thank you for that, Mr. Yeoman, and really appreciate the extra information that I can pass on to the community. Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My concerns were with the same application, so that there's no concerns to the properties that would be located to the west then, in terms of noise impacts.
Mr. Yeoman.
Through you, Madam Chair, the noise study did not conclude there would be impacts to those properties.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments on consent? Seeing none, I did want to point out again the Building Division monthly report for September, item 2.6. It's on page 52 of the agenda. And we have passed that, according to this report, we have passed that, that mark as at the end of December for $1 billion in building permits for the City of London. So we were wondering whether the COVID pandemic and the brief shutdown in construction would have a negative effect, and obviously not. Looks like we're going to have possibly a record-breaking year at the end of December, and I just want to extend my thanks to staff, knowing the challenges of the pandemic and also the staffing issues, and yet still delivering on getting these building permits out the door so that we can continue to have the economic benefits of this kind of development here in London. So thank you to staff for the work on this. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the same item, I noticed that first I'd echo your comments, but even further, I think more importantly is the inspections being done to close those permits in a timely manner, 100% compliance in all those categories, which is impressive with the shortage of staff. I was wondering if there might be some insight as to why the number of permits issued is on track for such a high number. We've seen a dip in the past year. So COVID, I would have thought, as Madam Chair, you'd identified, might have actually slowed things down, but it seems to not only accelerated, but slingshotted that even further. So were these anticipated developments, or is this going a bit further than what we thought?
Mr. Kokoros.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Councillor Turner. While some of the multi-residential type permits were in fact anticipated permits being issued because they were applied for a year ago or some 2 years ago, what we're seeing in terms of a surprise is the increase in single detached dwelling construction. And as one could understand, we react to industry. So I guess there's some understanding out there that similar to what happened in April when residential construction was essentially shut down for a few weeks, the industry, as I understand it, may have some concerns that something similar may happen as soon as the second wave of the pandemic hit, because we're seeing an increase in applications still, whereas normally this time of year we see a little bit of a decrease in terms of the number of applications that come in. And just to point out, only for the month of September, this year we issued 68% more single detached dwelling permits than we did last year. So I can't pinpoint to one specific reason for that, but again, our understanding is that industry is a little bit leery of a potential second shutdown to residential construction, which may or may not happen, and particularly when the second wave hit.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Kokoros. That's a helpful insight.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. I will call the vote.
I vote yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and we have one time scheduled item. Item 3.1 is a public participation meeting regarding an application at 1150 Fanshawe Park Road. I'll look for a motion to open the PPM. Moved by Councillor Kayabага, seconded by Councillor Turner. I'll call that vote.
I vote yes on that, Madam Chair.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
And I'll turn it over to Ms. Wise for an introduction of this item. We do have a few people in committee rooms, members of the public who are wishing to speak to this. So I'll go to you, Ms. Wise.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, committee. The application before you is for the development of a 6-story apartment building along Stackhouse Avenue and 6 stacked townhouse units along Fanshawe Park Road East through official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. During the application review process, we have heard from many of the residents in the area, which has provided detailed feedback that has helped identify major themes and issues for our consideration. A range of concerns were raised from the community about the existing and increased traffic along Fanshawe and Stackhouse, the height of the built form and the proposed scale of development, which was seen as incompatible with the existing neighborhood character, the impacts on privacy, views and shadows, the loss of trees, the impact on school capacity, the location and type of garbage storage, and a variety of other factors that were evaluated through the application review. The proposed form of development has been through 2 major design iterations to respond to concerns raised by the public and staff where possible. The final version of the proposed development is well designed and thoughtfully laid out and includes positive design features such as the buildings are oriented to and located along the Fanshawe and Stackhouse frontages. This screens the parking areas and activates the street edge. This also maximizes the distance to the existing neighbors to the west, which preserves privacy and minimizes the impacts of any shadows. The use of underground parking reduces the amount of parking required at the surface, and this allows for greater landscaped open space areas and more generous setbacks to facilitate the preservation of the mature spruce trees along the west property boundary. And these trees specifically have an important role in screening and buffering the adjacent properties. The requested zoning amendment is for a site-specific bonus zone to allow for a greater height of 6 stories and a greater density of 133 units per hectare, where 100 units per hectare is the maximum. The bonus zone comprises the positive features of the enhanced design of the site, as well as providing 6 affordable stacked townhouse units at 90% of the average market rent for a period of 20 years, which is a considerable benefit to the surrounding area and the city overall. In summary, the recommended amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement, which encourages appropriate intensification within settlement areas and the provision of a range of housing types. The recommended amendment conforms to the policies of the 1989 official plan and the London plan, which both contemplate medium density uses and a mid-rise scale of development for the site. The bonus zone facilitates an appropriate development form that locks in the desirable design features and provides for affordable housing units in exchange for the greater height and density. And overall, the proposed development is well designed and appropriate for the site and compatible with the surrounding area. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wise. So first I'm going to see if the applicant is here and if the applicant would like to speak to this. So come forward, state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of council. My name is Michele Dornbush. I am the owner of the property and the applicant that's brought the application before you this evening. I have had an opportunity to review the staff report. We did spend an extensive amount of time working with staff on this, and I would like to comment on the exceptional cooperation that we received throughout the duration of this application in working with staff, and obviously given the circumstances of COVID. We were quite satisfied with the timing and the process and the overall support that we received from staff. Based on the information that's provided in the staff report, we have no concerns with the recommended amendments. We're fully supportive of what staff has outlined in the staff report, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions of the committee members this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dornbush. I will go to committee to see if there are any technical questions about this application. Seeing none, I will go to the committee rooms where members of the public are waiting. And if you would like to address the committee, please come forward to a microphone. I will recognize you and state your name, and you'll have 5 minutes. Welcome, I see. Welcome. State your name. You've got 5 minutes to address the committee.
Hi, my name is Nancy Cabral. I'm a resident of Howlett Circle. We do have a petition that we put out this weekend opposing the height as well as the density, keeping it a medium density. We would really like that to be revisited. So there we have 20 hand-signed petition, as well as 120 people who have signed the petition online. We'd also like to address that since there was a fire about a month ago, the buffering of the trees no longer exists in certain areas because many of those trees have been burnt down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cabral. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the committee? Okay, I see some movement in committee room 1/2. Go ahead, state your name, and then I'll jump over to Committee Room 5 after Committee Room 1 and 2. Go ahead, miss.
Hi, my name is Jamie Cernsich. I'm also a resident of Howlett Circle. I have the same concerns about the height of the building. I think that for the neighboring backyards, having a fifth and sixth story there over what is it's currently zoned for would provide some concern for the privacy of the backyards. I also noticed that this site is zoned for a commercial use, a commercial convenience use. And I think that's a really important amenity feature for the neighborhood. I think it would really strengthen the urban fabric to have some kind of commercial use in this building, fronting along the street of Stackhouse or along Fanshawe. That would provide an important amenity for residents that's not currently available in this neighborhood. So I think that that should be reconsidered in the current design of the application, and some of the main floor space should be opened up for commercial use.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Committee Room 5. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My name is Dale Dawson. We live at 1305 Howlett Circle. You'll find on the map that tucks us right up beside Fanshawe Park Road, backing onto the proposed development. So we bought and built in 2014, and like our neighbors, we were told that it was to be commercial behind us. And clearly, as you've heard it aired, that is a significant change for us. It takes us from peace of mind to a situation that we're really not pleased with. So in particular with us at the end of the row, so our lot is 55 feet beyond our property fence. Proposed development is calling for the townhouses just 14 and a half feet beyond that fence. That leaves us looking at 40 feet of townhouse wall instead of the 30-foot cedars we look at now. On a safety concern, because we live right there on Fanshawe, we get a front row seat to the speed and the volume of traffic. It's beyond scary, I can tell you. As an ex-pilot and a muscle car buff, speed doesn't bother me, but what I see on Fanshawe terrifies me. And I have talked to the traffic unit. Of course, resources are limited there. I see families trying to cross Fanshawe, specifically like an 8 or 9 year old boy, a younger sibling in one hand, and even younger sibling in the other, and they dash to the median. And the idea of putting more residential in there, more kids trying to get across to the park across the street with traffic moving at the speed and volume that it is an invitation to tragedy. The night that the Ross's barn burnt, my wife and son were out, and when we came home to a Fanshawe being blocked by police, and our first thought was, it's happened, okay? Somebody's family member has been hit trying to cross Fanshawe, okay? So again, the idea of putting more residential in there to us is only asking for trouble, okay? So I thank you for this time, I appreciate it, and thank you for giving us a safe environment to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to the committee? Okay, I see Committee Room 1 and 2. Come to the microphone, sir, and state your name, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Bob Small, and I'm the owner of 1152 Fanshawe Park Road East, the present home of Tyner Short and Clothiers. Over a year ago, the owner of 1150 Fanshawe Park Road informed me that they had sold the property to Brock Developments. I was led to believe the new owners had plans to develop a 2-story apartment/condo, with the first floor being commercial, retail office space. I was satisfied with this use. Apparently that was just a rumor. In June 2020, the developer applied for an application to build a 6-story, 125 unit per hectare apartment condo building. At first I was upset, but then I thought, sometimes this happens. The applicant asks for 6 stories and ends up getting scaled back. In August 2020, the Brock Development Group invited me to a meeting to view their plan of development. There was no sign of townhomes facing Fanshawe Park Road. Discussion evolved around removal of trees on my property, purchasing my building, use of the septic system on the Brock property, and sharing my driveway so that the apartment building entrance would be at the south end instead of the present north end of the property. There were positives and negatives from that meeting for both parties. In September 2020, a revised plan was submitted. This plan showed the addition of 6 townhomes. Can I take it off? Okay. This now increases the plan to 133 units per hectare, increasing the density of the property. I'm objecting to this plan for the following reasons. 1, my building is set back from the road. The proposed buildings, the 6-story in particular, as well as the 3-story townhouses, will have a more prominent exposure to Stackhouse Road and Fanshawe Park Road. 2, the proposed buildings will overwhelm my 1-story building. It gives off the feeling of being surrounded. My tenant, a men's clothier, needs all the exposure he can get, especially in these trying times. 3, these townhomes present a problem because I'm not sure where they will be located in relation to the road and sidewalk on Fanshawe Park Road. I was told by the planning department that they would line up with the last house on Halmer Circle, 1305. Consequently, this would adversely affect the line of sight for customers from the west trying to find the store. I also have concerns about the shattering effects on my building from the 6 3-story townhomes. I have not received any drawings from the planning department showing the effects and would appreciate that they would be provided to me. 4, the original application plan in June had drawings of the side view of the apartment, my building, and the corner of Fanshawe and Stackhouse Road. These were elevation drawings showing the layout of the apartment building in relation to my store. There are no elevation drawings for the townhomes on the west side of the property, which would show the placement of the townhomes to my sign and store and the property to the west. I would appreciate that they be provided to me. On page 80, basis of the amendment, I believe the increase in the height and density is not appropriate for the site and it is not compatible with the neighborhood. Where in the neighborhood is there a 6-story building, let alone an apartment building? Increasing the density of the development in the amended application was not addressed the concerns from the neighbors who expressed their thoughts in the first application. In conclusion, I feel this apple needs to be polished up a bit. Therefore, I'm recommending that the planning committee send this application back to the planning department for review, including more neighborhood input. I further suggest that if the applicant had done his due diligence, we would not be having these conversations. If that had happened, we would now not be looking at a hodgepodge, grasping for strings plan that we have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. I just want to ask, just a remind of people that are in the committee rooms, under the current regulations, we must keep our masks on at all times in these public gatherings. So it is difficult to speak through the masks. So if you could just keep your mask on and project as much as you possibly can, or get closer to the microphone, that will help as well. So I'll look again to committee rooms 1 and 2 and committee room 5 to see if there are any members of the public that would like to address the planning committee. And one more time. Oh, I see someone coming forward.
Madam Chair, my name is Michele Dornbush. Again, I just wanted to respond to a few of the items that were brought up by the public.
Well, Ms. Dornbush, you've had 5 minutes. If the, I understand, we'll wait and see if there are any other members of the public, and then I will go to you to address some of the concerns that have been expressed if you have responses to these concerns. But
Okay.
first, let me give one more chance to the members of the public to see if they would like to ask questions or share their concerns. Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Dornbush, don't go walking away because I see that there is nobody else that would like to address, so I will give you an opportunity to address the concerns that have been expressed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a few very brief comments. There was the initial discussion with regards to the trees that had burned down. The trees that were affected by the fire on the property are central to the property. All of the spruce trees that we've been proposing since the outset of the application to be retained are still there. They were not affected by the fire. So the entire hedgerow of the tall spruce trees will be maintained. With regards to the townhouses, we did provide, and I am hopeful that the council committee members is able to see that we've provided all of the elevations, the south, the east, and the west of the townhouses. So those are available in the staff report. And as well, a full shadow study was provided. It is included in the staff report, and it does show that there are no impacts on the Tyner Shorten property from the proposed townhouses nor from the proposed apartment building. Again, thank you for this opportunity. And if there are any additional questions that do come up, I'd be happy to answer them for the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Dornbush. And given that no other members of the public are seeking to speak this evening, I will look for...
Sorry, I have one more member of the public who would like to speak about the item.
Okay, thank you.
In front of the camera, and you have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah. You just have to keep your mask on, sorry.
Excuse me.
State your name, sir, and then you have 5 minutes to address the committee.
All right, thank you so much. Well, my name is Yudhbir Parmar. I live in Havlet Circle, and I think I'm also one of the victims or one of the affectees by this new construction which has come up. The other day there was a meeting, and my friend had expressed so many concerns, and I endorse all of them. I repeat, I endorse all the concerns raised by my neighbors and my community members. But there are 3 at least, which I would like to focus. The first one is, because they're planning to build make a building there, 6-story. So there's going to be underground construction, and they're going to dig. I'm from a science background, and I can assure you that my house is not even 50 meters from that place. My house would be the first to get those cracks. Does the owner of the building give me an assurance that if at all there is any loss to my property, she's going to bail me out? That's my biggest concern. The second concern is that this Havlet Circle, it lines with the property all along on the west side, from south to the north, and there is plantation of those spruce trees. Those trees are very, very old, and they're very tall, thick vegetation. It is only in the last 10 or 15 meters towards the north where there is no spruce trees. Unfortunately, my house lies in that area, and the entrance of the building is going to be from that side. So that means, I don't know how many cars would be, or the vehicles would be leaving in and out. All those lights at night would be flashing at my house. The thing is it possible? Anyway, some construction has to come, whether it's commercial or residential. Is it possible for the builder or the owner of the property to first have those trees planted, because it's only 10, 15 meters of bald area. So if they can plant the spruce trees, well, now, by the time that building comes up, those trees would have really grown up, and at least there would be some relief from the light falling on my house. The third thing is, Canada, as you know, it's a cold country, and it's only in the summers we get a chance to sit outside in your backyards. Honestly, by this construction, because the garbage room, or I don't know, garbage collection center, what they have been calling it, that's just going to be about 10 meters from my place. That means you are just shutting down the doors for me to sit outside. Well, I'm an immigrant. I love this country, but certainly I've not come here for the litigations. I respect the law. Please, and please kindly consider these considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parmar. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the committee on this issue? Okay, I'm not seeing any movement in either committee room, so I will look for a motion to close the public participation meeting. It's moved by Councillor Hopkins and seconded by Councillor Kayabaga. I'll call the vote on that.
Councillor Turner, please. Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So first I will address, one thing that did come up was a question about the shadow study. And on page 139, 140, and 141, there are, the shadow study graphics are shown there for the months of March, June, and September. And it shows the results of the shadow studies that were conducted. So those are pages 139, 140, and 141 of the planning agenda package today. The other thing was we had a couple of questions from a member of the public, and they were for the applicant. So I will ask the applicant, there will be some tree plantings that take place on the site to provide buffering to the west, I believe, and can those trees possibly be planted early?
Madam Chair, we are proposing the additional plantings along the west property line to fill in the gaps between the large established spruce trees. That would be in combination with providing some additional screening on the fencing to ensure that there are no lights that spill through the fence. With regards to plantings, it's generally not in the best interest of new plantings to bring it in prior to all the completion of the construction. The long-term health of the vegetation would actually be better maintained with the planting occurring at the end of the project as opposed to at the beginning of the project. It's definitely something we can look at, but it's not the best option for the vegetation.
Thank you, Ms. Dornbush. A second question was about if there is anticipation that the construction activity, I guess in particular the excavation of the site, will there be effects on the houses that along Howlett Circle? Will there be effects on their foundation?
Madam Chair, with regards to the excavation, as I'm sure council and committee members have seen, excavation can occur right up to a zero lot line, and we see that all the time with apartment buildings with underground parking. All of these components of the building are all engineered. Obviously, the engineers are qualified. They have professional regulations that they have to comply with. So we are quite satisfied that the professionals are designing it as per the building code requirements, and there will be no impacts on the adjacent properties, as you see on a regular basis that underground excavation does occur regularly.
Thank you. So those are the questions I had. I'm not sure if committee members caught some that I missed, but I will go to committee members now for comment, questions, debate, and discussion. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have a follow-up question to the trees that the applicant sent would be planted along the west. Are these, do we know the type of trees? Are they going to be buffering trees in terms of privacy trees, or are there any plans for that, given the buffering that the residents are speaking to on the west side? I guess that could be a question to the applicant.
So I see the applicant there at the microphone. Ms. Dornbush, if you'd like to answer that.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Hopkins. Yes, we would look to provide some sort of planting and trees that would, over the long term, provide additional buffering. With the existing spruce trees, however, we do have to ensure that the plants are compatible because the spruce trees are very large and established. So we want to ensure that the new plantings are going to survive amongst the larger spruce trees, but we are going to do what we can in terms of providing additional buffering at the lower sort of eye level for screening.
And if I may, just to follow up, would they be sort of evergreen trees, or are you not there yet in determining what kind of trees should be planted to create that screening there?
Ms. Dornbush?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have not gone into the finite details of the exact tree species, but that would all be determined through the site plan approval process.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Halmer.
Thank you. I think the general orientation, having the taller building further away from the existing residential along Stackhouse, is a good idea. Having the shorter, less intense townhouses sort of more adjacent to that existing residential and out onto Fanshawe, I think makes a lot of sense, especially given the existing commercial operation that's there on the corner. I do think a lot of the issues that have been raised by members of the public are site plan matters. You know, what's going to happen with the plantings, you know, how is the parking going to work, where's the garbage going to be located, how's the access to that going to happen. And I do think when you have this kind of intensity, besides some of the single family homes that are there now, a lot of those issues can make it good or not so good, depending on how they are actually resolved. So I think for this particular proposal, having a H5 to have a public site plan meeting might make a lot of sense to see what those details are, you know, what kind of plantings could go in. There is a pretty long strip, looks like landscape open space to me before the parking area starts along the western boundary. And it seems like there could be an opportunity to do some kind of plantings there earlier. You know, the parking lot construction would have impacts, but not quite like the same as digging out the foundation for the 6-story apartment building on the other boundary. So I think those matters could be dealt with potentially in the public site plan meeting. I think that the concerns that a lot of the members of the community have raised could be addressed there. And I would suggest that we add that on. I don't know if there's support from the committee for that, but I would suggest adding an H5 to this one. I do think that the zoning, given the official plan designation, it's medium density multifamily residential, it's neighborhood place type, that having residential in this location is appropriate. I think having a higher density out near Fanshawe Park Road and on Stackhouse fits in pretty well with the overall plan in this area. And I think being able to walk from here, if kids and families are living in this building in the future, walking just north to the school would be a wonderful way to get to a wonderful school in our city. So, I support the application generally. I think it's good planning, but I do think some of these site plan issues are going to have to get sorted out. And so an H5 would be good. So I'd suggest the whole staff recommendation, but with the H5, if there's support for that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So you're moving that motion, the staff recommendation, plus adding a holding provision that would require a public site plan meeting. So that's moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Hopkins. Are there Councillor Turner?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Perhaps for you, Ms. Wise. I was trying to find the Stony Creek Community Plan. Our website reorganizations made things a little more difficult to find. Perhaps, if I might ask through you, just a description of some of the key components in the Stony Creek Community Plan. I recognize that medium density multifamily residential is contemplated here. What does it speak to with respect to heights and densities?
Ms. Wise.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So the Stony Creek Community Plan was created in around 1998, and it was created at the time to help inform what the future designations would be for this whole area. So that's where the medium density designation came from. It did have a large part of the areas abutting the major roads as medium density residential. For this particular site, it also recognized that it would be allowed to operate with the secondary permitted uses. Those are the existing convenience, commercial, and restricted office uses. So it doesn't have a residential zone that corresponds to the designation. It just has the secondary permitted uses. But that community plan would have defaulted to the 1989 designation. So that would have been a maximum of 75 units per hectare without bonusing, up to 100 units per hectare with bonusing, and around 4 stories generally for the built form.
Councillor Turner?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So just on that last part, they're generally 4 stories, and I guess that ends up being that rub between the 4 stories and the 6, where we've seen development along Fanshawe Park in a number of very similar circumstances and locations. Those developments have been generally limited to 4 stories. I think there might be a couple exceptions to that, but those ones that we've dealt with in the past 6 years have been generally of the 4-story character. Why, in this circumstance, are we looking for a little bit more height?
Ms. Wise?
Madam Chair, so as always, we respond to the application that's before us, and in this case, the request was for a greater height and density than is typically contemplated under the policies. So it really comes down to the merits of the application, how the actual site is laid out, what that additional number of units and height manifests into the actual site itself. What the trade-off is for bonusing. In this case, we're getting the 6 affordable housing units. And really the design in this case lended itself to the increased height and density, still providing a compatible type of development for the neighborhood, and also achieving those medium density targets for the primary transit area and built area boundary.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's helpful. It's always going to be that challenge is in height, and in a lot of those other circumstances, more height had been applied for, and the ultimate compromise ended up being falling on 4 stories. So we hear this number a lot. I'm not thinking it's completely inappropriate for the site, though. I think those cedars lend well for shielding for those on the adjacent court. And taking a look at that, actually, that would create almost a complete shield, I would think. I can't picture what the elevations would be and the sight lines from the back of those houses, but I think those trees, if they were retained, would probably provide material shading and screening for the adjacent properties. But as Deputy Mayor Halmer had identified there, a lot of these end up coming down to site plan issues, and I worry a little bit that that somewhere along the lines something happens to damage those trees and they get lost, in which case it would take a long time to be able to generate that level of screening for that height. It would probably take another 10, 15 years before you got that level of screening back from growth. The other issue that I was taking a look at there, and it was raised in some of the letters talking about some odors from garbage. I recognize that the garbage will be kept within the building, except on garbage day when it'll be moved out to the concrete pad, similar to the applicant's development on Wonderland Road. The garbage pad is located adjacent to the rear lot lines of some of those units on the court. And I wasn't sure, and this is also a site plan issue, but if there was opportunities to see that relocated closer to Stackhouse rather than closer to the residential properties that this application abuts. The rest of the application, it makes sense that there's some density here. It's directly on a transit stop. It's directly on Fanshawe Park Road. There were some concerns about traffic. I think actually the addition of extra units here might actually start to make more case for a pedestrian crossover or some controlled intersection to allow for movement to the park on the south side of Fanshawe Park. And perhaps maybe through you, Madam Chair, that might be a question for traffic. I don't know if there's anybody here representing that, or if that was contemplated in the future of the buildup of this neighborhood.
So I'll go to city staff that are on the call. Is there anybody representing transportation there that could speak to Councillor Turner?
Madam Chair, I can chime in for the transportation impact assessment if you like.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Ms. Wise.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, there was a transportation impact assessment that was prepared and submitted as part of the application. So it evaluated what the current situation was in terms of traffic, as well as what the likely increase would be associated with the proposed development. It found that it would be like a marginal increase, and that it didn't warrant stoplights at the corner of Stackhouse. However, that study did note that there are undeveloped residential lands to the northeast of this site, on the east side of Stackhouse. So when those develop, it will likely be assessed again that it may warrant the stoplights at that time.
Councillor?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I think that's helpful. That's what I would imagine would happen. The presence of that park on the south side of Fanshawe Park creates a bit of a disconnect from the neighborhood on Howlett, and seems to deem some sort of safe crossing, especially for children going through there. I think that's a valid point that was raised by a member of the community, and should be investigated. I would think that adding the additional residences would help to bolster that argument a little bit. I would anticipate that the total increase in traffic would be marginal, but the increase in residents would be such that it would start to help support a safe crossing pedestrian environment. Fanshawe Park is not the most conducive road for pedestrians to cross, an unprotected crossing. So I would raise that as well as something to contemplate. I think as Deputy Mayor Halmer identified, most of this is site plan issues. There is a significant amount of community interest, which certainly warrants the use of an H5 holding provision. So I'm quite supportive of that. I think the density in this area is appropriate. I'm on the fence on the 6 versus 4, but I think there's a trade-off in the bonusing that seems reasonable and in the public interest. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, and I am supportive of the holding provision to allow the public to go through a public participation through the site plan process, because we've heard from the public loud and clear their concerns around the site plan issues with garbage and the tree buffering, and Councillor Turner mentioned that crossing, the safety of movement in this area for pedestrians in particular, I think is something to be considered. Maybe not right now, but definitely bringing it to everyone's attention. The trees, the preservation on that west side, the buffering, I think is very, very important. And the site plan process will allow the public to have further input as it relates to garbage and lighting. So I would definitely encourage the public to be part of that process. Generally speaking, I am supportive. This proposal does speak to the intensity or that is being given as it relates to the bonusing around affordable housing, mainly being 3- and 2-story units. I think is for the public good, and the underground parking is something that it's good to see. Less concrete on above ground. And this is an area that has a number of bus routes too, so opportunities to have the transit used in this area. Supporting transit, I am generally supportive of the application.
Any other comments or discussion from committee members? Seeing none, I'll ask the vice chair to take the chair from me and recognize me next on the speakers list.
I'll take a look at the speakers list. Madam Chair, I have you next.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. I have a number of questions. First, as you may or may not know, this is in Ward 5, and the people from the members of the public that are here speaking are constituents of mine. So some of my questions may be for staff and some may be for the applicant. This is for you, Ms. Wise, through you, Mr. Presiding Officer. There has been some questions from the neighborhood in general over the past few years, and the question is, when will Stackhouse Drive be finished in terms of sidewalks, cycling lanes, street lights, things like that? So I've been asking over the years on behalf of constituents and have been told that there is development in the future on the opposite side of Stackhouse. There are lands there that are scheduled for development, and when that development takes place, then we will see Stackhouse more finished with regard to sidewalks and streetlights. But through you, Mr. Presiding Officer, to Ms. Wise, in front of this particular building, as far as this development goes, will there be sidewalks and or street lighting that will be installed at the same time as this development takes place?
Through you, Mr. Presiding Officer, through the site plan approval process, there will be the consideration of sidewalks in front of the Stackhouse frontage, the extent of the frontage for this part of the street. However, the full improvements that Stackhouse Avenue will see in the future, I do believe that is correct, that they are associated with future development to the northeast. So when those lands develop, that will also include improvements to the Stackhouse Avenue road.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer, and through you to Ms. Wise, and possibly the applicant may have a response as well. But first to Ms. Wise, was there any thought given to making, I see that the zone is continuing to be office, convenience, commercial, so that option is still there. Was there any thought, either from the applicant or from city staff, to at least make the ground floor of this proposed building a commercial use?
Ms. Wise?
Madam Chair, so one of the provisions in the bonus zone is actually to facilitate that type of outcome. There is a special provision that is included for the existing permitted convenience commercial and restricted office uses to operate within the apartment building on the ground floor if that should eventuate. So that provides a little bit of flexibility, and that was in response to some things that we heard from the community where there was desire for some of these community amenities, daycares, convenience commercial uses, that sort of thing. So that provision will help facilitate that outcome, but it would be up to the applicant whether or not they take advantage of that.
Ms. Cassidy, or Councillor Cassidy, do you want that to be referred to Ms. Dornbush as well?
No, I'm happy with Ms. Wise's response there, but I have another question, Mr. Presiding Officer. There was a concern raised about possible cracks in the foundation, and I know people often have this concern. The applicant has assured us that the excavation will not cause any damage to surrounding homes, but I'm wondering what the city's response would be in the off chance that that does happen. If there are effects on neighboring properties caused by the construction work, does the city intervene at all? What is the city's approach if this does happen?
Not sure who's best. Is that Ms. Wise? Mr. Yeoman?
Mr. Presiding Officer, I just wanted to note that in this case, there is a very generous setback from the west property boundary where those existing dwellings are to both the apartment building and the underground parking, which is generally under the footprint of the building. So that setback is about 30 meters or 98 feet roughly. So this is quite a distance away from some of those other existing dwellings in the area. I might leave the other part for our building staff, if that's all right.
Certainly. Who's best to handle that on building?
The presiding officer, it's Peter Kokoris here. I'll jump in on that one.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Kokoris.
So the Ontario Building Code does have provisions and requirements for a subsurface investigation on a building of this size. Having said that, that's primarily for the construction and essentially the structural stability of the building itself. When it comes to construction techniques that may affect adjacent properties, the building code does not govern how the actual construction takes place. So to give an example, if someone wanted to form a concrete slab, how the temporary supports are put in place, that's not under the purview of the Ontario Building Code. Any damages that may be incurred as a result of construction on adjacent properties or buildings, we would see that as a civil matter.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Those are my questions. I'll just, I have a few comments, and I'm not sure where I am in my 5 minutes, and I'm hoping the committee will indulge me since this is a Ward 5 issue, and obviously you can tell that the community has some concerns. So I want to first address the issue of affordable housing, because that did come up in a couple of emails that were addressed to me and also to Ms. Wise, and I'm sure to other committee members as well. I want to be clear what affordable housing means. And affordable housing is different from social housing or subsidized housing, and doesn't, not to say that one is bad and one is good, or any in fact, they are all good. But affordable housing is a type of housing that, that makes the rent level at a certain percentage of the average market rent across the city. So if the average market rent on a 1-bedroom apartment, for example, would be $1,200 per month, then the affordable rate for these 6 units is a percentage of that rent. So it's a lower percentage, which brings the average or the monthly rent down somewhat, and it locks that rent in, that percentage in for a number of years. What this does is it allows people that would live in these buildings to stay in the area and actually have access to the jobs in this area. They could work anywhere, of course, but there are a number of jobs in this area of Ward 5 and in this area of the city that are retail and service-oriented jobs often tend to be lower paying jobs. And so this allows people to live in North London, live in Ward 5, and have access to these jobs, so they're not traveling all over the city to get to the jobs. That's a good thing. I also want to address the concern of the height of the building, and I completely understand the concern. And I've had a number of developments in Ward 5 that have proposed higher heights, and I've always pushed back, and I've always fought to get those heights lowered. I want to let the members of the public know what usually happens when we get that height lowered. What usually happens is the applicant still builds a building that has the same number of units. So it doesn't reduce the density, it doesn't reduce the number of units, it brings the building down in height, and then the building expands this way. So it takes up a greater part of the site. So what would happen if you got pushback from this committee, if we pushed back to planning staff and we pushed back to the applicant and we said, no, we insist that you make this 4 stories, the usual outcome is a wider building. We would see the loss of more trees. We would see the loss of probably those spruce trees on the western boundary line. And we would often see the loss of the underground parking. That is a big part of this as well, because the underground parking is preserving much of the site, preserving the natural landscape so that there isn't a need for a larger parking lot. And with that underground parking, or with many of those cars being put underground, it makes for a better looking site. And again, it preserves more of those trees, which is a better outcome for the neighborhood.
1 more minute.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. I also note that we will see some sidewalk being installed in front of this building on Stackhouse, and it's something that the neighborhood has been asking for a very long time, as well as I anticipate some lighting along the front of this building on Stackhouse. And right now, if you travel Stackhouse in the winter months, in the evening, at nighttime, it's very, very dark. So this will be an improvement to the neighborhood. I am pleased to see that Deputy Mayor, unfortunately, Mr. Presiding Officer, Deputy Mayor, had to leave for a moment. There is an event taking place that he is the acting mayor, and he is speaking at. Oh, he's still on? Good. So he made this motion to add this holding provision, which is a good thing, because as the deputy mayor and as many members of the committee have pointed out, a lot of these issues are site plan issues. And what site plan issues means is, right now, we're dealing with the zoning issue. We're dealing with the land use. Is this an appropriate use of this land to have an apartment building on this site? The details like the trees and how the lights will be on the parking lot, where the entrance will be off of Stackhouse, all of those things are site plan issues, and they come after the rezoning takes place. So to have a holding provision requiring a public site plan meeting means the public gets to come back. So all of you members in the committee rooms, you get to come back to the planning committee at a future date and speak to us again about these details. Can these trees be planted in a certain place? Can we have the lighting shining a certain way so it's not shining onto our backyards? Those kinds of issues are the ones that get addressed at the site plan meeting, and you get to have your say again, and city staff are there taking note of all of these issues and making sure that they're addressed during the site plan process. So having said all of those things, I just wanted to give that kind of information to the members of the public. One more thing, the pedestrian crossing at Stackhouse and a street light at Stackhouse is again another long-term issue in this area. Stackhouse, that crossing is on the warranted warranted traffic light list. Staff continue to study it, and in fact, I believe all of the technical stuff that lights the lights is already in the ground. It's there, it's ready to go. So once the traffic meets the warrant, once there are enough cars that staff can come along and install the traffic light there. But I want staff on the call, and I will be going back with Transportation Division outside of this meeting to ask them to keep looking and to look again, not only at a traffic light for cars, but especially a pedestrian crossover. There is a pedestrian crossover coming in closer to Trossachs or between Trossachs and Fremont, I believe, in there, but that's quite a ways to the west of this street. And there are a number, do I need an extension?
Are you just about done, or do you need an extension?
Maybe just to be safe, but I'm almost done.
Motion for an extension?
Councillor Hopkins is moved it in case you can't see her.
Moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by?
I second it, Mr. Presiding Officer.
Councillor Kaibaga? All right, a quick hand vote, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Hearing none, carry on, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. So that crossing is really, really important. Once, I don't know if people may not be aware of this, but Fanshawe Park Road was widened to 4 lanes all the way from Adelaide to Highbury. It had been 2 lanes, and over the last number of years, 3 or 4 years, it's been widened to 4. My constituents regularly ask London Police to come out and monitor the area. We're seeing speeds of 120 kilometers an hour on this stretch of Fanshawe Park Road. It's like the Wild West. And I share the concerns of the neighborhood for people that are crossing. We just had the Fanshawe Optimist Little League Park finished in the last couple of years. It's a beautiful neighborhood park, and people from the Howlett Circle area absolutely would love to cross Fanshawe, take their children to that park more frequently, but I'm sure there is some hesitance to doing that because of the traffic on Fanshawe Park Road. It's not a great situation, and so again, I will be reaching out again to Transportation Division to see about a pedestrian crossover somewhere in this vicinity, because I too am scared of an outcome that none of us want to see. So having made all of those comments and knowing where I see the committee going, and the committee is very supportive of this development, I'm going to support it as well, because I do know that the applicant has done a lot of work on this, and I want to say thank you to the applicant. That does not, I don't want to in any way diminish the concerns that have been brought forward. I also want to note to Mr. Kokoros that I will be reaching out to you and to Mr. Small to talk about the sign on the Tyner Shorten property, to see if there's a way that we can address his concerns to make sure his sign is still visible to people traveling on Fanshawe Park Road. But the number of trees that are being preserved on this site, having gone through a number of infill projects in Ward 5 with a smaller site, a smaller size of the site, and a larger footprint of the building, I think the applicant has done a very good job of bringing this building as far away from the Howlett Circle properties as possible. I commend her for the underground parking and the preservation of trees. And in the public site plan meeting, I will be pushing for as many trees to be planted on that western property line as possible. So those are my comments, Mr. Presiding Officer. I know there were a lot, so thank you for indulging me.
You landed it right on 10 minutes, Madam Chair. I'll hand the chair back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. So I'll look to committee for any other comments or questions, and I see none. So we have the Deputy Mayor online. He's no longer on video, but he has moved this, and it has been seconded by Councillor Hopkins. It is the staff recommendation with the addition of an H5 holding provision to require a public site plan meeting. And with that, I will call the question.
I vote aye, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Halmer, how do you vote?
I'm in favor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The rest of us will vote on screen.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
So to the members of the public, I do want to say that you will be receiving another notice of a public meeting. Generally, it's usually about a year away before we get to the public site plan meeting. It could be sooner than that, but you will receive another notice. Anybody that made a public comment, either verbally or in writing or by telephone, is on Ms. Wise's list, and you will be notified when the next public meeting takes place. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for coming out and sharing your concerns with us. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is a request for delegation status for the Bird-Friendly Skies bylaw by Mr. Brendan Samuels. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, or do you have comments, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
I just wanted to ask whether Mr. Samuels is here.
Yes, I see Mr. Samuels in Committee Room 5.
Excellent. I'd like to move that we hear the delegation tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and seconded by Councillor Turner. I will call that vote.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for...
Hold on, Mr.
I vote aye, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Hold on, Mr. Samuels, we just have to vote on your delegation.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Wonderful. So now you can go ahead, Mr. Samuels, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for receiving my delegation. Last November, the committee received a proposal from Development Services to update the site plan control bylaw to help prevent birds from flying into windows on buildings. This proposal followed recommendations drafted by London's advisory committees going back at least 3 years. The city adopted one of the proposed amendments to the bylaw and introduced restrictions on artificial lighting to reduce sky glow at night. Dark skies are indeed important for birds, helping them to see subtle cues in the night sky that they use to navigate. However, most of the time that birds fly into windows is happening during the day, when lighting is not relevant. The proposal included a separate set of changes for bird-friendly building design. The committee directed Civic Administration to, quote, further public consultation and provide for consideration future proposed amendments to address other possible bird-friendly design criteria, including the possible use of visual markers on glass-treated high-rise buildings for council consideration. For the record, I would like to clarify that birds in London are not threatened by our few high-rise buildings here. Although those do kill some birds, most collisions are happening at residential, institutional, and commercial buildings, especially structures near green space. Statistically, most collisions happen at windows on homes. The glass piece of the site plan bylaw went back to Development Services for review. Over the following months, I participated with other subject experts in 2 meetings of a working group. We laid out evidence-based solutions for the problem. What we proposed was simple. Last year, the federal government sponsored a standard for bird-friendly building design. We recommend that the city should adopt the federal standard and require bird-friendly materials under that standard in all new site plans. I'm speaking to you today because the glass piece of the bird-friendly bylaw never materialized. I'm unaware of its current status, and I'm not sure if the city plans to complete this work. I cannot consult my advisory committee for further direction, so I am appealing to your committee directly. Sadly, I am contacted often by people in London about a bird that just hit their window. Since Mayor Holder asked the delegation last November how many birds are killed by windows in London, I collect data on collisions throughout the city. The average building with glass kills between 2 and 10 birds every year. I would estimate the number of birds killed in London each year is in the range of tens to hundreds of thousands, including at least 7 known bird species at risk that are protected by provincial and federal law. As London mobilizes to address climate change, it must also take actions to stem biodiversity loss and mitigate harm to natural heritage. We simply cannot have a forest city without birds. Birds provide irreplaceable ecosystem services like pollination, seed dispersal, pest insect control, and birds make up a bedrock of the food chain. Birds are economically and culturally important to Londoners. Many people in London enjoy feeding and watching birds. London is a leader in bird research and bird monitoring. People who care about birds should be alarmed. North America has lost 1 in 4 of its birds over the last 50 years because of human activities. The top 3 ways that humans kill birds are through habitat loss, predation by pet and free-roaming cats, and collisions with windows on buildings. Collisions with windows are the easiest of the 3 problems for London to address. And yet, there is a large proportion of the general public in London that does not realize this is a problem with solutions. At last November's meeting, civic administration was directed to, quote, undertake a public awareness campaign to create visual markers, treating glass and muting the reflection of glass on buildings to ensure buildings are less dangerous for birds. In my opinion, this awareness campaign is extremely important. Most of the time, birds hit windows on existing structures, not new buildings covered by site plans. There are simple voluntary steps the public can take to retrofit windows that will help birds see and not crash into them. In fact, there are a number of local businesses in London who offer products and services for this purpose. By encouraging window retrofits, the city could generate business opportunities for glass and window film companies, window cleaning companies, tradespeople, bird feeding stores, and so on. I am prepared to volunteer to help city staff come up with the language and graphics for communications about window collisions. I already produced materials that I will gladly hand over, but I'm unclear about how to proceed. So I have 4 questions for the committee today. What is the status of the Bird Friendly Skies program? Who is responsible for communications about the program? When will this work resume? And what is the scope of enforcement for the glass piece of proposed changes to the site plan bylaw? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuels. Wonder if there's anybody from city staff that can respond to any of the questions that Mr. Samuels brought to us today. Mr. Yeoman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to respond to it, and I'm glad Mr. Samuels is bringing this to everyone's attention. So this is, of course, a very important initiative that was initiated by the community. We have been actively engaging and are actively engaged in the early part of the year on this initiative with the stakeholder group, as Mr. Samuels mentioned. However, because of COVID, we've unfortunately had to table this for the balance of the year and redirect our resources to application processing. In development services, we unfortunately have a limited capacity for standards review and new initiative implementation. I've been short a site plan approval officer, and also we didn't have our summer student this year as well. So I can indicate, though, that we will be actively reinitiating this and pursuing it in the new year with something to be brought forward to committee in Q1 of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Yeoman. Committee members. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Mr. Samuels. I think this is a really important conversation that we haven't had in quite a while, and in fact, almost a year. So thank you for bringing this forward to us. Having worked in a bird store for a number of years, I know how important it is to Londoners as well. The collisions to residential homes is a concern in the London community. And I think the more that we can educate, communicate, and look at opportunities that may be available to us to retrofit windows or to really just educate the community is something that's really important. So I understand staff's challenges with staff and that, but I am really looking forward to having this come back in the new year. And I wonder if there is an opportunity to somehow still keep Mr. Samuels connected, because I know EPAC is not sitting at the moment, to be still engaged in that process. I guess that's a question to Mr. Yeoman, if we are going to get information and how is it sort of spread to the community in the new year, I would assume, but just trying to understand the process as we move forward.
Mr. Yeoman, I see your hand is still up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, yes, we'll definitely be resuming our discussions with the stakeholder group that was formed to have the discussions back earlier this year before we bring recommendations to committee and council in the new year.
Thank you. I look forward to that, and hopefully we can get things started. Thank you.
Any other comments? Deputy Mayor.
I just want to thank Mr. Samuels for his work on this and coming to committee to inquire as to what's going on. I think it's something we need to keep an eye on and keep it moving forward. I know we got lots of different things going on at planning committee, and staff are trying to juggle a lot of different things at the same time, but you can see from the letter and from his delegation, we got lots of great residents in Ward 4, and Mr. Samuels is one of them.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Any other comments? No? Seeing none. So thank you, Mr. Samuels, for your delegation. I heard that staff are going to move this forward in Q1 of 2021. You will, I know, keep us and city staff on task, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you again. Thank you. Thanks. So I need a motion to receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Hopkins and seconded by Councillor Turner, and I'll call the vote.
I vote aye, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So before we adjourn, I wanted to, on behalf of the committee and staff in the room, say a very happy birthday to Councillor Kayabaga, who is celebrating today. And I'm sure you saw the balloons in the background. And I was expecting yellow balloons personally, because I know that's your favorite color. So happy birthday, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Happy birthday.
So I do also want to call the committee and public's attention to the launch or the lighting tonight of the tree in Victoria Park to start November off as Shine the Light on Women Abuse and the Shine the Light on Women Abuse campaign that happens every year. You may have noticed some of us wearing purple in council chambers here today and outside of council chambers as well. And this is to acknowledge the Shine the Light on Women Abuse campaign that's taking place, and the message by the London Abused Women's Center here in London has spread across the country and also spread to other parts of the world where other places light their buildings and facilities in purple lights, and City Hall will be lit in purple lighting and other city buildings as well during the month of November to call attention to this campaign. So thank you to the London Abused Women's Center for the advocacy and the work that you do on behalf of women in London and around the world. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Hopkins and seconded by Councillor Turner. I can do a hand vote on that. All those in favor?
In favor, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And that motion carries. And we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.